X-Men. Get it!
Hey everyone, and welcome to another exciting episode of Battle of the Atom. This is your weekly X-Men podcast where we rank every story from A to Q.
I'm Adam.
And I'm Zach. And wait.
Did you say Q?
I did say Q. Because this is all about Q. That's right. We've become a conspiracy theory podcast.
Stop.
And we're going to talk about the secret underground cabal of Satan-worshipping baby eaters? Is that...
That is not
that
the Q we're talking about. No, we're talking about the Q from Star Trek The Next Generation. The alien who was in the pilot. You know what I'm talking about. You're a big Star Trek fan.
I thought we were talking about the Q like the white ball that you hit when you're playing pool or snooker.
No, we're just talking about cues, like lines that you wait in to go on rides and stuff like that, or to vote.
See, I thought we were talking about cues like your signal to start, say, some sort of event or a play or a line in a production.
I'm pretty sure we're talking about cues like, how we abbreviate questions. So the whole thing will be Q's, but no A's.
Okay, you win. You got me. No, we're talking about Quintavius Quire. Or, I'm sorry. We're talking about Quintavius Quirinius. How do you pronounce the middle one?
Isn't it? It's Quintavius Quirinius Quintin Quire.
Okay. That's right. We're talking about Quintavius Quirinius Quire. Short for Quintin, if you really want to. It's Kid Omega.
Yeah, Kid Omega. And this was requested by who, Zach?
This was requested by Patreon supporter Zachary Hunter, who is not me in camo, I assume. Unless, much like the seminal Grant Morrison Doom Patrol story, Beard Hunter, this is someone who is hunting me specifically. In which case, weird to give me money first.
This is the first step in the master plan. Well, I am really excited about this episode because we are going to talk about a series that I think we've been pretty much on the opposite sides of the spectrum on for every time we talk about it. And we're finally getting to talk about the first couple issues of Jason Aaron and Chris Bachalo's Wolverine and the X-Men, numbers 1, 2, and 3.
That's right. Spinning out of the Regenesis event, it's Wolverine and the X-Men. Now, I'll tell you, Adam, as I think we've had this conversation in the past when we talked about Kieran Gillen's Uncanny X-Men from the Regenesis era. Mm-hmm. But I found out over the internet that they were relaunching the X-Men books, and there were going to be 2 number 1s, one about Cyclops' team and one about Wolverine's team. And I looked at the teams and I said, okay, one of this has Storm and Cyclops and Colossus and Magneto, and the other one has Wolverine and Kitty's pretty cool. Beast is fine. And I went with the Gillen one, and I don't regret it. I do regret the Greg Land art that plagued that run that we've not really had to talk about, which is great. But what I didn't know is that Wolverine and the X-Men would have been drawn by my favorite artist.
Well, yeah, and that's where I was, looking to catch up a little bit, because I jumped on in the Bendis era. I jumped back on him with the Bendis era and was looking to fill in from Schism forward. And I was like, oh, Chris is drawing this. This is the series that I want to read. Now, I didn't realize he didn't draw much more than the first 3 issues. The amazing...
He draws stuff during the AVX arc.
Yes.
He comes back for, I think, 8 through 10, I think he does. And then maybe a couple others.
Yeah, he does. I think he does at least one other arc. But the amazing Nick Bradshaw is the main series artist, at least for the beginning of the book. And I know that you and I have never seen eye to eye on this book, and I have learned over the years that people actively dislike this book quite a bit, whereas
Yeah, that makes sense.
always kind of got a kick out of it. However, rereading the first three issues for tonight for this episode, I do understand why this may grate on people. So, where do you want to start? Should we just give a quick summary of what's happening here?
Sure. So after the events of Schism, which if you want to know what happened in Schism, go back to our episode about Schism. It was all about Schism. We just did all of Schism.
Yep.
Wolverine has restarted the Xavier Institute as the new Jean Grey School and is training the next generation of children to just be students and mutants and stuff. His plan's not very clear. What he knows is that that's what Xavier did, so he wants to do it. Should Wolverine be a school teacher? Probably not, which is a fun pitch for this. The first arc is about, not the first day of school, but the day that the accreditation board is coming by. Not the accreditation board, excuse me. The New York State Board of Education is coming by to ensure that everything is up to spec. And it goes incredibly poorly.
Right.
In that things get derailed because Wolverine's bad at running a school. And then also things get derailed because the new Hellfire Club from Schism is here. And they send all sorts of chaos that causes the X-Men to have to defend their school and causes Quintin Quire to have to try a little bit. Not a ton, but a little bit.
Yeah. I think you just summed it up pretty nicely. I think last episode we talked about Hickman enjoying playing with the toys in the toy box. One of the things that I've always one of the things I appreciated about Wolverine the X-Men is that Jason Aaron really just wants to play with the toys in the toy box. Even if it doesn't really make story sense or continuity sense, he is excited about saying, okay, well, this thing I liked from the past is back, even if it doesn't make any sense. So the amount of things that we get in these three issues, we get a Krakoa, we get a Sauron, we get a Wendigo, we get Frankensteins.
Hey, does it bother anyone else as much as it bothers me that there's Wendigos or a Wendigo in this, when Wendigos, are what happened when you eat somebody in Canada specifically? That's what a Wendigo is. When a human eats another human in Canada, that's how you get Wendigos.
And when
Jason Aaron pulls this again in the Hellfire saga,
and when they
don't like it.
When they cross over the border, they're supposed to go back to people, right?
I don't know enough about Wendigos to argue that. I know that's what World War Wendigo posits.
Yes. Now, I was saying how much I enjoyed this the first time through. It is a madcap romp. It is nonstop. The premise of the first couple issues, as Zach mentioned, is this inspection. So especially the first issue is just straight up a tour of the school. We're starting to learn which X-Men are teaching which classes, and we're solidifying what the premise of this book is supposed to be. We're also solidifying that, I guess, the main ongoing baddies are going to be these kids from Schism. Now, I think when we talked about Schism, we both agreed that these kids kind of suck.
Yeah, we're talking about Cade Kilgore, Manuel Enrique, Maximilian Vaughn, Katzel Lindbergen, and Wilhelmina Kensington. The Kitty Hellfire Club, they are all under 12. Mm-hmm. They are all sociopaths. They have all done incredible amounts of murders. And this is not in this story, but the most bizarre choice I think that I have seen in comics in a while is happening regarding these kids in Marauders, where, spoiler alert for the latest issue, Jerry Duggan really tries to humanize Wilhelmina and give her a reason for her trauma, but she is such a cartoonish character that it comes off as just incredibly tone deaf and weird and bad. And there was a lot of talk about that in our coverage of that the great Andrea Ayers did with Ian Gregory, so go check that out if you get a chance on Comics XF.
Yeah, I think one of the things...
I hate these children.
They are... You mentioned the word cartoon, and I think that is a huge part of whether you're going to enjoy this or whether you're going to hate it, because it is very much sort of, bonkers, throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what's going to stick kind of scenario. X-Men supposedly has been in the past a story about, Xavier educating mutants of tomorrow. The book has actually never really been about that. So this
you remember how the X-Men graduated in issue 7?
Exactly.
And then Stan and Jack said, maybe let's not really do the school thing anymore.
Exactly. So the idea that this is sort of a return to roots is not a real thing. This is kind of a newish idea for how to do it.
Remember when Chris Claremont relaunched the X-Men and he had Xavier come back and try and give Wolverine demerits?
Yes.
And everyone just looked at him and said, "But
Nope.
What are you doing?
We don't do that anymore."
We're adults."
But I do think that if you're trying to just establish what this series is supposed to be about, whether you like it or not, I think that it does a really good job of it, because we understand that this is going to be silly. It is going to be lots of wacky things happening all the time. And we're going to be trying some new things. We've got Banffs crawling all over the campus, stealing whiskey. We've got Iceman, who is now able to create duplicates of himself.
Okay, can we talk about that scene for 1 second?
Yeah, sure.
Because it's the big center point of the second issue, and it's Wolverine telling Bobby that, hey, I brought you to the school first for a reason. Live up to your potential, kid. And he goes on this big speech about how, a man of untapped potential, don't you dare ever call me that again, which is super unearned because he doesn't do anything to realize his potential. He just kind of flips on a switch and says, I have new powers now.
He also kisses Kitty, which is really weird.
Listen, sometimes I'm straight, you're straight, but we have a lot of friends in the queer community, and there's a concept that I have learned of called beards. Which is a fake hetero relationship to hide your sexuality. And I like to believe the lack of chemistry between these two and the out-of-nowhere kisses are 100% that. I think that's the most sensical reading of this, in my opinion.
Yeah, I have to agree. It's definitely compensation if it's looked at in a certain way.
It's what it really is Jason Aaron watched X-Men The Last Stand and said, sure, they can be a relationship. That's fine.
Yeah, probably.
That's what it is. And it sucked there, too.
Probably. We are also getting introduced to this. I like this cast of kids. So we've got Brew already establishing that, he's in love with Edie. We've got Quentin, who I gotta give Aaron credit. Before this, Quentin was still kind of like a amorphous thing after Morrison's run, and what we know of as Quintin Quire today was definitely established in this run.
Sure.
The smart alecky, quick-witted, but lovable brat, I think, is definitely... I can give a lot of credit to Jason Aaron for doing that with the character.
Aaron absolutely did that. The challenge that some people have is that before this, he was a neo-fascist terrorist kid.
Right.
So having that spun off into, he's just got a bit of an attitude. I can see why that rubs people the wrong way when dudes like Quintin Quire have gotten away with way too much in the world. But also, that's the character as he is today, and we can accept that maybe there should have been a smoother path to get him into where he was. But I like to think when he just lived as gas for about 5 years, he mellowed out.
Yeah. So I think there's a lot of cool stuff happening here. I agree that, the humor is definitely not going to be for everybody. Also, in the third issue,
I hate it.
We've got multiple pages done by fill-in artists that are really not good compared to Chris's like really stellar work on the rest of the book.
Chris is doing a great job, and Duncan Ruelu and Matteo Scalera, who are both totally solid artists. Nothing against them, but they pretty much got filled in to make sure the book got out on time. Didn't they?
Absolutely. So
they're running on a tight schedule. I get it.
Yeah. I think that you will know immediately if this book is for you if you read this arc. You know, if you read it and you're like me and say, "Oh, this looks kind of zany. I want to check this out." It's gonna hit you the right way. If you're, looking at it and going, these jokes are not landing for me, and this just seems a little. I think the biggest complaint that I've ever heard is that the book seems almost in the wrong genre. For what X-Men should be. I've heard that before.
And I think those people are wrong because X-Men can be slapstick. I've read Excalibur. I know.
Yeah.
I've got no problem with a humor series. Mm-hmm. My problem is that Jason Aaron's not funny. Jason Aaron has these ideas of let's throw everything together and see what happens, which is how you get Frankensteins with flamethrowers and a Krakoa and all this weird stuff, and it's not interesting. Like I'd compare it to that AVX arc of Gillen's Uncanny, where Mr. Sinister has what is very much a wacky, random castle in the ground.
Yes,
and there's a bunch of wacky things that the X-Men have to fight, but all of those feel like set in ground in the setting that was already established, where Jason Aaron likes to throw literally anything he can at the reader just to get a reaction. He did it with his Ghost Rider. He's done it with this. Heck, he does it with his Avengers, where he's just, let's make everything as big and as crazy as possible. And it sucks when he does it. It really does suck. Jason Aaron's good at writing, or Jason Aaron's not good at writing the wacky stuff. He just does it. He writes the wacky stuff, and then he's good at writing big, strong, buff dudes who are really, really frustrated with life and just hitting stuff hard, a la his Conan, which is good, his Thor, which is good, his Weird World, which is good. The only time his wackiness has, I think, worked for me is in Doctor Strange, where...
But that's a much more idea of surrealist and still tempered by
that fits with the book.
Yes. Yeah. So let's rank this on our big list, because I think we're bringing up good points, and I'm very interested to see where you want to put this.
So we've got a lot of stories on our big old list of all the X-Men stories forever of all time. In fact, we have 534 stories. The number one story is The House of X, The Powers of 10. Number 100 is X-Force, Volume 3, 1 through 6, Angels and Demons. Number 200 on our list is All New Wolverine, Old Woman Laura. Number 300 on our list is X-Men 118 through 119, The Submergence of Japan. Number 400 on our list is Uncanny X-Men 414, Fall Down, Go Boom. Number 500 on our list is the Marvel Superhero Special 6 through 8, where Roy Thomas was there and wrote the Australian X-Men. And then 334 is The Draco.
Okay, so I'm looking at the list. At 159, we have Battle of the Atom, which is one of the crossovers that happens later in this run. I don't think this is as good as that. I think that has, more ideas and, is crossing over with the Bendis era in kind of a more interesting way. Below that, we have the pretty much the second arc of this, which I think is more successful. That's the one where Kitty gets impregnated by the Brood, and Wolverine and Quentin go to the gambling planet.
Right. The gambling planet's way more successful than the time Kitty got Brood pregnant.
I would agree. I do think this is better than, I'm looking down at like 170, which is the X-Men Blue Cross-Time Caper. And I do think this is more successful than that.
Yeah, probably. Like at 208, we have the Hellfire Saga from Wolverine and the X-Men, which is very long and equally kind of bad. But this does have a lot of good Chris Bachalo art. Like, he's my favorite for a reason. I do love it. I don't think it's the top thing he's ever done, but it's pretty good. But okay, so 2 spots above that, 168 is X-Force Us versus Them from Cy Spurrier's run, which I think is heads and shoulders better than this.
I think it's better as well. And then, so in between that, we have X Factor Volume 3, number 16, No Dominion.
I don't want to give it to Peter David, but also that story's better than this.
Okay.
In fact, okay, I'm thinking of...
All right. What do you?
Okay, let's look at Cross Time Capers. Cross Time Capers, need I remind you, it's got that RB Silva art. It's got that good RB Silva art.
Yeah, but it's still early RB Silva, and it does not
compare to... It's got X-Men
to...
2099 in it.
It doesn't compare to what... I know, and yes, it has the Future Brotherhood in it. So yes, cool stuff happening. I do think that this is better. And I think it's even doing, for all the character work that we might not like with things like Bobby, I think that it's doing a lot of character work of things that Hickman is even drawing on now. And Percy is definitely, as we'll talk about later in this episode. So I think this is our new 170, Zach.
Fine. But I'm doing it under protest.
Always under protest. Well,
you think this is better than 168 Cable and X-Force 1 through 5? Yeah, that arc's not the best part of Cable
come on,
and X-Force.
Man. Give it a little bit of credit. It's
no.
Now,
I do not gotta hand it to him.
We are not going to hand it to him for this next story. So, what are we talking about next, Zach?
We're talking about Wolverine and the X-Men Volume 2, number 1 through 6, Tomorrow Never Learns. This is written by noted sex creep Jason Latour, with pencils, for most of it, by fantastic Marvel artist Mahmoud Assar, with the last issue having a weird batch of people, including David Messina, Mark Deering, Massimiliano Veltri, and also Pepe Larraz is here for like 3 pages. We got Pepe.
We'll get to that. We got
Pepe in the house. I forgot.
That is one of the biggest whiplash moments of the entire arc to go from. All right, let's just talk about the art real quick, and then we'll talk about the premise of the story.
Yeah, let's start the
Asrar is off to a great start. This is one of his first big Marvel gigs. I think he does a pretty good job.
I think this was the first book he launched.
Oh, okay.
I know he was doing stuff with Ultimate Comics X-Men before this, but I mean that was deep into the run. So this would have been before he did All New Avengers. Yeah, he had done some fill-ins. Okay, no, he did Shadowland tie-in, the Power Man one, which is I forgot he did that. That one's kind of pretty. But yeah, this is the first like run he launched.
Yeah. And
before moving,
he's doing a great job. Bendis
stole him.
Yeah, I think he's doing a pretty good job.
No, actually, he's good. I want him on my books now. Thank you.
What's fascinating is to look at where he's come. Where he's grown into this amazing artist that we see today, and the evolution is crazy. So
can I tell you what I think a big part of that evolution is, compared to what we're seeing or what we saw in this issue? Because I was trying to figure it out, because I was like, I like Assar, but this is significantly this is not at the same level as what he's even done like very recently, and I think that comes down to our colorist on this, because this is colored by Israel Silva, who's not my favorite colorist as far as I could have favorite colorists.
Mm-hmm.
But on his other work, like his Avengers was colored by Dave McCraig. All New X-Men was Marte Gracia, and Marte makes everything better. Eve Scarvina on X-Men Red. Conan the Barbarian had who'd Conan have? Matt Wilson. Matt Wilson's a pretty good colorist. I don't know if you figured that out. But like, and Senegal did the stuff on X-Men with Hickman recently. Israel Silva does nothing for Asar here. He's not coloring him right. I honestly think that's it. There's still some figure work and some detail stuff that Asar's going to get much tighter on as his career progresses.
Yeah.
Over the next 7 years. But I think like the fundamentals are here.
Of course. Yeah. No, his storytelling is fantastic.
And his design is great. His Quintin Quire design, I absolutely love with the cardigan.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's great. It's
love
it.
Not great though artistically is when we get to the final issue. These fill-in artists are absolutely terrible, and we get this little whiplash between Asrar. We even get a couple of pages of Pepe Larraz in here, and some of the worst published art I have seen in a Marvel book in a long time. And all of that does not help a fairly incomprehensible story. So we went from Wolverine and the X-Men Volume 1, which, as we just described, is, sort of a madcap book about the Jean Grey school. And we've jumped into Volume 2 as we know that Wolverine is going to die. Why they started this book in the first place, I have no idea.
Okay,
it's post Battle of the Atom. So Quentin met his future self and learned that he was supposed to, be the bearer of the Phoenix, and Latour decides to base this entire arc on that premise, and it's dumb, to say the least.
It is. So Latour. So when this book was set up, my understanding from some interviews is that, well, I'm gonna give some extrapolation.
Okay.
On some things.
Okay.
Jason Latour, co-creator of Spider-Gwen, has said on podcasts about Spider-Gwen. I believe it was the Ultimate Spin podcast, which was about Miles Morales and Spider-Gwen. And it was great. Actually, one of the best production values I've ever heard, and some of my favorite comics interviews came from that podcast. It's not running anymore. But if you ever get a chance, go check it out, because I think it was a great show that was running at the time. But they did an interview with Latour, again, before allegations about him came out and all that stuff, just to keep that clear, where he said that Spider-Gwen was essentially a editor apologizing to him that things got screwed up on a previous book, and this was his previous book. So I get the feeling that Latour did not fully know Wolverine was going to die, and based on the fact that Bendis pulled Wolverine into an arc, and then Wolverine wasn't at the end of the arc because he was going to die, makes me feel like maybe not everyone knew Wolverine was going to die.
I don't know. I'd have to go back and see when the press materials came out, but it
was after, it was several months into this book.
Okay. And regardless of what was known internally, this is just poorly written. The storyline centers around Quintin Quire having graduated from the Jean Grey School and being promoted to a teaching assistant, which doesn't make a dang bit of sense.
Hey, don't you have to do any amount of college?
Right. He basically graduated from high school, and they, put him in a collegiate teaching position of some merit. So, the X-Men, and I guess the world, it seems, are under attack from the Phoenix Corporation, which is a immortal dude who has figured out how to collect Phoenix shards to stay immortal over time. And he has am I getting this right? An Ascani soldier named Peacekeeper John or something like that, who is his enforcer.
You're talking about Faithful John or John Breaks Sky? Yes.
Yes, thank you. And
also, Eden Young which is such a
Young with an E. That's the guy. That's the
Eden
the
with
immortal.
an A, Young
Yes.
with an E.
Yes.
Which all of that sucks.
And I guess the premise here is that, because the Phoenix Corp knows somehow that, Quentin is destined to become the Phoenix and or fight Evan, who will one day become Apocalypse, that this is all a ploy for Young to, use him to continue to stay immortal or something along those lines. A lot of it is basically them fighting the what's the guy's name? Father Misty?
Faithful John.
Faithful John, thank you. There is a kind of fun thing that involves Dupe.
It's a good splash page, and it's a non sequitur for the rest of the dang series.
Yes.
A brilliant thing that Asar drew.
Yeah.
It's absolute nonsense.
Dupe is, I guess, at the side of Willie Nelson, who has died crashing a semi-truck after being attacked by ninjas, and Dupe rides off on a motorcycle with this tiger on the back of it.
Can you tell that Jason Aaron and Jason Latour are friends? Because I can tell that Jason Aaron and Jason Latour are friends by the fact that Jason Latour is doing a bad Jason Aaron impersonation. But that one did work. That joke did work. Yeah.
There's a couple of iBoy puns that are, I guess, funny. But the whole center of the story being based around this version of Quentin that's not really interesting. A version of Edie that's equally kind of, I don't know, it doesn't really give her a lot of agency. And the stuff with Phantom X that's here, because Phantom X is in the miniaturized world, but the world doesn't really look like the world we usually see or like. And he's
fighting monsters.
It doesn't make sense. By the time you get to issue 6, it becomes so convoluted and so poorly crafted that you will have absolutely no idea what is happening and or why, what anybody's motivations are, how the story concludes.
Yeah, you find out that all of this was actually a ploy by the old future version of Quintin Quire to inspire his younger self / get revenge on Evan, because Evan Sabanor, that's the clone of Apocalypse. Evan Sabanor made Heidi his Horseman of Death, and then she died, and Quentin never got over that, and it's this whole really bad thing. Like, this is such a complex story that does not need to be. You don't need Eden Young and Faithful John to be different characters. You don't need an entire corporation appearing out of nowhere. You don't need to completely rehash. Here's the thing. They like, oh, here's Evan. Here's Phantom X, his dad friend. They just do every Evan Sabanor story that has been told up until that point, which is just Uncanny X-Force, which is way better.
Yeah. It's retreading, and it totally misses the tone that I think people might have been expecting from this book, and it's terrible.
Do you remember the part where in issue 1 of this they introduce a new character called Nature Girl, who's Lin-Lee?
I do.
Who's an Asian girl with horns, like she's in a Fall Out Boy video.
Yep.
And she doesn't talk at all. And then Christina Strain, friend of the show, gets her in an early issue of her Generation X and says, "Yeah, did you really think just because I was a quiet Asian girl that I didn't talk that I was mute? What are you, like someone who likes really terrible stereotypes?" And it's very good to see that.
It's a great burn. Oh,
and Jason Aaron Jason Latour deserves to be burned more. Great design by Mahmoud Asrar. Which is why I am very happy that Nature Girl has appeared in other places where she's good and given, a personality.
Yes.
There's some weird stuff with armor that happens in this too, where she gets removed from her armor.
Yeah, that makes no sense. And it never happens again. I don't think anybody really pays attention to this book because it doesn't make a lot of sense, and it's terrible and unenjoyable.
Do you remember the part in this book where there's a reference to Astonishing Wolverine and Spider-Man?
Yes. Yeah.
But unless you are intimately familiar with that book, you'll have no idea why there's a random inset panel of Wolverine holding a gun with the Phoenix logo on it.
Again, overly complicated for no reason. Rehashing Phoenix stuff is like a big pet peeve of mine, and it's, like I said, by the time you get to the end of it, it's nigh incomprehensible. So,
has anyone ever written a Phoenix story that has referenced anything except for the Dark Phoenix saga?
You mean, well, are you talking about things that have happened previous to the Dark Phoenix saga?
No, just like, I feel like every Phoenix story is like, I've read the Dark Phoenix saga, and I've read nothing else involving Phoenix.
Well, yeah. Yeah. Well, and everybody just sort of tries to play around with it, and it never really works well.
Hey, can I ask you a random question that's going to explain a whole lot about this book?
Yeah, go ahead.
Do you know how many editors were involved in the creation of this? How many different bespoke editors?
Well, it looks like
Tom Brennan does 1 through 3.
Oh, it changes, yeah.
Janine Schaefer picks up at 4 and 5, and then Katie Kubert picks up from Janine Schaefer at 6.
My God.
By 7, Mike Martz is back.
Well, the unfocus definitely shows, and I think we're going to rank this pretty low.
It's bad.
So let's take a look. I'm looking down at... Oh man, I'm already into the 400s here.
I mean, it's worse than Fall Down Go Boom.
Oh yeah, no. This is worse than that. 485 Onslaught, better or worse?
I never like it when I get to say that Onslaught's better, because that just Onslaught's better than this. Phoenix War Song and Phoenix End Song are bad, but I was thinking about Phoenix War Song today.
Yeah.
Just like a few hours ago, out of nowhere, I was like, man, you remember the 1,000,001 from Phoenix War Song? That's neat. I've never thought about Eden Young or Faithful John or the Phoenix Corporation.
No, you never would, because they're terrible. I think we're on a similar level of like cognitive dissonance as the Shatterstar saga at 504. Like, this is a similar feeling of getting to the last issue and going, wait, what?
I mean, you're right.
So that's it.
This is better than 512 Dazzler the movie. I feel good about saying that. This is better than Dazzler the movie.
All right. I don't
Is it better
think...
or worse than Axis?
I think it's worse than Axis. And I hate Axis.
You do hate Axis.
I don't know. I feel like somewhere along the line, like at least something happened in Axis where I was like, oh, that was kind of cool. Like maybe some of the
like the club,
stuff.
like the Hulk's Hulk.
Yeah, something happened that I was like, okay, well that's more.
No,
clever.
you actively hated the Magneto stuff in Axis. I can tell you that.
Oh, okay.
That was the one where Rick Remender was like, you should feel bad about killing the Red Skull, who's actively doing a concentration camp. Magneto.
Yeah, that stuff was stupid. Okay.
Axis is bad too.
And Eve of Destruction, as we always point out, has the one Wolverine and Wolverine and Cyclops sewer issue. So
that was pretty good.
I think this is a step below Eve of Destruction and a step above the X-Men animation special.
Well, hey, any amount of Mahmoud Asara art is better than grainy stills from a VHS.
Yeah, I would agree.
Maybe if you don't read any of the words, you can get something out of it. But honestly, if you want Asara art, just literally look at anything else he's done. It all rules.
Great artist.
Look. If you want some Asara art, just look at that page from All New X-Men 40, where it's just the two panels of Jean Grey and Iceman, and it's like, Bobby, you're gay, and he's like, what? That's good Asara art.
Asara he's fantastic, and he only keeps getting better.
What's he doing right now? Now that he's off X-Men, has he been announced for anything?
I don't know. I haven't seen anything, so we'll have to. Do you want to look it up? Are you looking it up?
I am looking it up.
He's
right
looking
now.
it up.
I want to see what
the
Asara's
power
up
of
to.
the internet.
Okay, his Wikipedia entry just popped up, and it says, Mahmoud Asar is a Turkish comic book artist who's known for his work on American and non-American comics. His American work includes pinups for Savage Dragon 124 and Invincible 20. No, I don't think that's what his American comics work is known for.
That's the first thing that comes up. We need to edit that. Good God.
Mahmoud Asar. He's known for being freaking good.
Yeah.
No, he's done. He has some covers. Like he's been doing the covers for Excalibur. I'm 100% sure he's got something in the pipeline. It just hasn't come through yet.
I'm sure.
It's just timing right now.
Giving him some lead time to get something done. You know who else is incredible and only keeps getting better is Joshua Cassara.
I get the privilege of having two different Joshua Cassara pieces in my office. Adam, you can see them right here. Behind me is, of course, my beautiful, beautiful maggot at the Tiki Bar that I got from... You remember when Twitter was an auction platform for a while last summer during the pandemic?
Yes, I do. What's the other one that you have a blob too, right?
Yeah, I've got a
Fred.
Cassara was playing Scrabble with his wife.
Oh right, he draws while he plays Scrabble.
And he drew a blob, and it's a great blob because I love Fred Dukes specifically because of Leo Williams and no other reason. But there's Fred making a drink while him and his wife's Scrabble score is next to him. I want to make one important point about this piece of art. His wife did win Scrabble by 40 points.
Well, you'd win too if you were... lose too if you were doing a drawing the whole time. That was probably more interesting than the game. So we're talking about...
I can't talk about the Scrabble board. I don't know.
We are talking about the most recent volume of X-Force, which is volume 6, written by Ben Percy. And at least the beginning of this story, 17 to 19, is drawn by Josh Cassara. And then
Sarah does 17, and Gary Brown does 18 and 19.
Right. To, I would say, diminishing effect. 18 looks okay. 19 starts to get a little sketchy. And, I do feel for the fill-in artists that have to come in on these books, because when the art is riding on such like a high level, especially with what Cassara and Guru Effects have been doing, at least Gary Brown has Guru Effects doing like the high level coloring that it's been going on there.
Hey, is it wild? Like, I was super disappointed when Dean White launched this book and then Guru Effects jumped in, because I guess I associate Guru Effects with... I associate them with Greg Land.
Yeah. And
but they're killing it here.
The painterly quality of the colors is just out of this world. The level of detail, it's absolutely amazing. So this picks up with the trope that has been going since the very beginning of Percy's run here, that Quintin is the Kenny of X-Force and continually dies and gets resurrected every mission. We start this first issue with like, I think 12 or 13 different Quintin Quire deaths, each more gruesome than the next.
It's a lot.
Yes.
And beautifully drawn carnage.
Oh yeah. The body horror and the sort of ecological, like just stuff growing everywhere, especially with like the way Cassara does Black Tom. It's so cool. He's just excelling at that.
Love it.
Quentin's also in a relationship. He's dating. Is it
Phoebe?
It's Phoebe.
It's Phoebe Cuckoo.
Okay.
Not Esme.
Not Esme. Who's
Esme, and the other 4 cuckoos or the other 3 cuckoos are dating Cable. Phoebe may also be dating Cable, but she's then also dating Quintin. I like to think that that Cable went on a date with all the cuckoos, and Esme was the only one who was like, okay, stick around. I also think it's because Esme's the only one that has a different costume.
Possibly. Yeah. So the idea here is that she wants Quintin to kind of like become himself, like, be a new version of yourself. Let's grow up a little bit, and Quentin's down for this, but he's also being haunted by this telepathic presence that is attacking not just him, but other members, other citizens of Krakoa and elsewhere, which turns out to basically be a Xeno. Xeno stole one of Quentin's bodies and essentially using it as a weapon.
Yeah, you remember right before Ten of Swords when there was the Cerebro sword, and we assumed that when the book was doing a lot to introduce the Cerebro sword, the Cerebro sword would be one of the 10 swords in Ten of Swords, and then it wasn't.
That was shocking.
It was an 11th separate sword. I'm sorry, a 21st separate sword. Because
Yes.
there were the secret about Ten of Swords is that there were actually 20 swords.
Wait, who had 2 swords? Didn't Gorgon have 2 swords?
Gorgon had 2 swords. Gorgon had Grass Cutter and I forget what his other one was because it's not in Saga Yojimbo.
Okay.
It was
still...
the swords that Hickman gave him in Secret Warriors. Everyone forgets. Everyone's like, oh yeah, Gorgon's so cool. Guys, go read Hickman's Secret Warriors where Gorgon stabs a kid to death.
Oh, man. So Quentin gets a makeover.
The kid's a god, by the way. He goes to see his father in the Elysian Fields. It's a great moment.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Gorgon was just murdering him, though. He didn't know that. It just worked out well for Phobos. Spoilers for an old comic.
Well, that's kind of what we do around here.
This is a new comic. This came out like 2 months ago.
Yeah, this is really new. We get a little bit about Quentin's backstory as like a kid and kind of his telepathic repression of it, which is kind of interesting. You were talking about what Percy's doing with, or what Jerry is doing with Wilhelmina, and it's not dissimilar. Like this idea of sort
childhood trauma,
right?
Sure.
Like telepathic repression of trauma. It's interesting.
Here's the difference between this and what's happening in Marauders is that Quintin Quire is a real character and not a joke.
Right.
Because Wilhelmina is
a cartoon character who kills penguins
loves
with
to
a hammer.
murder animals.
Yeah.
Introduced as in Wolverine and the X-Men as, hey, can we wrap this up? It's taking mallets to penguin time. She bought a zoo so she could hit penguins with a hammer.
Right.
And she's 10. So she's not a real character. Quintin Quire, proto-fascist terrorist. But he's growing up a little bit.
Yes, he is. And even Jean notices this because unfortunately, Beast has been pretty much taken out of commission to the point that Sage has to kill him.
Would we all be so lucky?
Obviously, he's going to be resurrected. But this is a standing agreement that Sage and Beast have, which is kind of an interesting revelation.
I just got it. That's why on the cover of X-Force 20, the Ten of Swords issue, Beast has such a large bulge because he got resurrected.
Oh my God,
and he just had that added to him.
Stop it.
That's that's relevant because that's text of one of Quintin Quire's requests in number 17.
Yes,
that his resurrection request.
Asking for some improvements. So
he wanted some more trouser salami.
Yeah, by the time we get to the last issue here, the art really starts to just, break down a little bit. I don't know if it's for time or what, but it gets a sketchy to a point where it just doesn't seem as high quality as what was in the issue before it, and especially not up to Kasara's level. And it's trying to do this sort of like psychic... I don't know. How do you want to describe it? It's like...
I would say that the book starts to get very conceptual at that point.
Sure.
Kasara and Percy have done that successfully. a lot. So I think Percy knows what he's doing, but because it's getting experimental in the storytelling, because it's getting very conceptual, having clear art is incredibly key to making sure that that story can be well told. And unfortunately, Gary Brown's art here is not incredibly clear, especially in 19. Don't know the situation, but it's noticeably of a poor quality.
Yeah, and it's not everywhere. Some of the
tough.
pages look better than others. But, this whole idea that he is going to sort of psychically go to where the bodies were and, I guess kill the evil Quintin. It's just it's messy enough that it's kind of actually hard to understand what's happening,
Yes.
Right? Like what's physical, what's psychic, what's, what's actually happening. And it just gets a little messy.
The book isn't clear. I think the storyline in general works. Quintin has to grow up, and the metaphor is made real. To become an adult, he has to kill the child. He has to literally get rid of the worst aspects of himself, manifest in this psychic clone that Zeno, an organization we know nothing about, has made. And I understand conceptually what's going on here, and I think from a plot standpoint it works, but from a total story execution standpoint, it really drops the ball by the end.
Yeah, and I think it's missing a pretty cool opportunity to. You just said we don't know anything about Zeno. Zeno was presented at the beginning of this book as sort of being the major foil, and really don't know what's happening with them. Like, why did they do this? What is the larger point, or what is the larger agenda? And I'm sure we're going to get more of that. We seem to have been promised some Mikhail stuff coming up.
We have to get past the stuff with manslaughter first.
Right.
Which, that sounds like a joke. I'm very excited for the return of Weapon X Project I'm sorry, not Weapon X, Weapon 4, Weapon IV Project Manslaughter, which are weaponized man things.
Yeah, he's already back.
I love Manslaughter so much. They have to fight Dr. Bloodroot, which is such a dumb name.
It's great. All right.
We were talking. I really do like X-Force, and to a lesser extent, Ben Percy's Wolverine. When the main artists are on the book, when Cassara and Adam Kubert are on those books, I think they kind of rule. I think any other time, it's dropping the ball.
Absolutely. It makes it much more difficult with the storytelling. So, all right, let's rank this. I think this is kind of middling. I think the story concept is interesting, but it just falls apart.
So we ranked a lot of Hickman X-Men stories last week. Mm-hmm. The lowest ranked of that is Giant Size X-Men at 113. This is worse than that.
Oh, I'm looking much lower on the list. At
219 is Dead Man Logan, and Dead Man Logan is better.
Absolutely. As I look down into the 200s, I think a lot of this stuff is better than this particular arc. Because I agree, I'm really enjoying X-Force as a book, and I love to see what Cassara is doing on a monthly basis. But, this one just... It doesn't. It's not up to snuff with the rest of where this book has been going. So, I see you highlighted 276 here.
276 is Astonishing X-Men 13 through 17 Until Our Hearts Stop, which is the Matthew Rosenberg, Greg Land Astonishing X-Men.
Yeah, I think you're in the right
spot.
Yeah, I think you're in the right part of the list. Like, I don't think this is as good as like a 266 Wolverine Noir.
Okay, so I'm gonna if that's your point, I'm not gonna disagree with you.
Yeah.
But it's not better than X-Men The Exterminated, because this doesn't have Cable and Hope having parent failings.
Yeah, I also think it's probably better than 269, which is the first appearance of Karma, Marvel Team Up 100.
Yeah, it's better than that. Probably better than that Lovelorn arc of Uncanny, Where
I would agree.
did you say better or worse than Wolverine Noir?
I said it was worse.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah. Let's
So
put it
this
under
will-
that and above Lovelorn at
All right, perfect.
267.
That's a good spot for it.
This is our worst ranked story of the newest generation of X-Men comics. And frankly, like, this is not in the bad X-Men comics part of this list.
No, not at all. And I would be fascinated to, see what this arc would have been like if Cassara was on all 3 issues. I probably would have ranked it much higher. But there is that sort of visual comprehension thing that just doesn't add up in that, especially in that last issue. So kind of falls apart. But we did get to see 3 very different versions of Quintin Quire today.
We did, and that's all thanks to Patreon supporter Zachary Hunter. If you want to be like Zachary, you can go over to patreon.com/comicsxf, reach deep into your hearts and in your pocketbooks, and toss a couple coins in our coffers and support the really cool stuff that the team's doing over there. By the time this goes up, there will be a incredible piece about Superman and Jewish identity that Zachary Raberoff, another Zach around here, wrote, that I have in front of me to edit. And even before I gave him some notes to expand a few things, I had told Zach that this may be the best thing that's ever been posted on the website. So I'm so excited for that to come out. And we got some other really cool and fun and exciting things going on over in our neck of the woods. And if you want to support those writers, help them get that money, we need money to give them. So the Patreon goes directly to them, and we absolutely love doing that. Or you can follow the site on Twitter at ComicsXF. Adam, what's up?
Guys, you can always follow me on Twitter at Arthur Stacy. And I mentioned it last week, but I will be recording the part 3 of Chris's on Infinite Earth's coverage of Executioner's Song next week. So make sure you tune in for part 2. I'm not sure when that's coming out soon. And then tune in for part 3, because yours truly is going to be there.
Part 2 will already be out after you listen to this, and then part 3 will be 2 weeks after that. So in about 2 episodes.
Yeah, but the first episode was already delightful. So if you haven't checked that out, make sure you listen.
Love our friends, the Chris's. Love our friends over at WMQ&A.
Yeah. Shout out to Jason Large, who redid the landing page for the podcasts for Comics XF. Thank you, Jason. And what do we got going on next week, Zach?
Next week we're talking about X-Men comics between 200 and 210 that John Romita drew that we didn't cover yet. But until then, folks, this has been Battle of the Atom. We hope you survived the experience.
Get it!